all set.
Okay, it's noon. It is noon, so it is time. So I will call the meeting to order. I know. Few snacks over there. Welcome everybody. Welcome everyone online and in person.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
All has spoken.
I sent you a few documents that we all have access to here, so I emailed them to you.
I saw that. I'm actually looking for them again here. So
Okay. So have people had a chance to look at the minutes? Yes. Any additions or corrections? I would entertain a motion.
Also move.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
I
Right. We have some staff introductions here, or a staff introduction.
Oh, public comments first?
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Public comments. I'm sorry. Are there any members of the public that would like to address the board? Okay. All right. Thank you. Sorry. I'm skipping ahead.
I want anticipation of the bill.
Build. Okay, with sufficient. We are primed. We are eager.
Let me have Lynn and Ms. Mayra.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Yes, it's my pleasure to introduce Mayra. She is our new library operations manager. And we're so excited to have her on board. I'm just going to let her tell you a little bit about herself. It's nice to meet you. So my name is Mayra. I'm coming from the Las Vegas Clark County Library District, where I previously served in several management roles and in several branches of our 25 out there. It's been a 3-year journey out to Deschutes, and I'm more than happy to be out here finally. I previously worked in public libraries, academic libraries, with a foundation in elementary education. So a little bit of education in library. And so what drives me is really finding a way to impact the community and meet their needs as best as possible. The last sort of 5 to 10 years have been more in the management role. And so this was kind of a perfect transition. And then the last 5 years have also been in several capital improvement projects. And so when I heard all of what was going on here in Deschutes, I jumped at the opportunity to join the team and be a part of it.
All right. Well, thank you. Welcome. Nice to meet you. I've heard great things.
All lies. Solid.
No, that's awesome. Welcome your expertise.
You'll see her traveling around the district, being one of the staff, a lot of the building supervisors, and also the buildings themselves. So,
all right, that's great. Okay, our next order of business is our bond updates from Greg.
Hello.
Hello.
Good to see you guys again.
Yes.
Hi, Bonnie up there. Bonnie.
I'm here.
So I think this past month, I think you probably saw in the report, it's a little thinner, but there was still a lot of exciting activity going on. You know, relative to our schedule, we actually published an updated master development schedule in July, actually right after the last board meeting. We've gotten to a point where we were really comfortable with the direction we were going on the central library, and wanted to get the schedule out really to our entire project team. They'd all been seeing drafts, and it helps from that published schedule. Since then, there's been no changes to that. You know, we're tracking along that program, and that's for all of the libraries. I think, as we know, the one library that remains on hold is East Bend, and that's pending after we get through the process central to make the decision later this year. So nothing really there has changed. The table didn't change as far as the dates on anything. As we go through the budget, again, very minor changes in cost estimates there, updated for what costs were paid out. There was a few commitments posted, things that we had talked about along the design side, but not really many changes that you can see there. The one significant change was we got an updated estimate of interest earned from Piper Sandler, the bond investment manager. And you can see it went up by almost 2.4 million. And so that is, when you look at the cost report on page 2, it shows up under the bottom, under sources, interest on bond investments. It's now up to 3.9 million. Now, we tracked that money back on the first page. So that's the inflow, right? That's a source of funds. We track the use of that under our reserve contingency, which is the last line item on the first page of the cost report. And so that reserve contingency currently sits at about 4.6 or a little more, almost 4.7. And that's a contingency that's not allocated out to any of the projects at this time because it's primarily funded by the interest earned. It's susceptible to downward movement, right, in the future. And so it's really a kind of a holding cell there to really see at what point do we feel comfortable about recognizing. And Piper Sandler will advise DPL, and we'll discuss it. Should it be allocated out to a project or cost? So that was the biggest change in the budget this past month. So nothing else really there to report on the procurement and contracts. No real activity, nothing new. You know, we talked last month about Miller Hall's cost, and I've been going through that with them, you know, kind of finalizing it to get their contract amendment prepared, ready for signature. And then we have a couple small things that we've got going with part of our due diligence in having our soils engineer go out and do their soils testing and that kind of stuff for that property. Nothing new on insurance. On the entitlement side, on Central Library. So as we last met, you know, we executed the letter of intent and entered into the PSA, purchase sale agreement. That was developed with legal counsel and finalized and executed, which that was executed on the 15th of July, PSA. And that then set what's called the effective date to trigger due diligence. And so we have a 90-day due diligence from the 15th of July through October 14th. And that's the process that we're working on. So that was, you know, kind of the entitlement side. Now, as far as what we've been doing since, you know, we've engaged our design team, all of them, to evaluate the property and expand on our conceptual design. And also we started looking into all of our utilities, further follow up with the developer to make sure, hey, is there anything out there that we need to be concerned about or plan for in the development, so that when we do come back with, you know, hey, recommendation, yes, let's move forward, or no, we need to, you know, back out of this deal. We'll be prepared to say that. So that's the big activity. One of the things that we want to do, and we'll go through the specific item, is engaging a land use attorney. And we spoke with Carrie Connolly, DPL's legal. And she advises us on everything, contracts, all of them. And this was a topic, land use, for this new that she really didn't feel comfortable doing. We felt it was important to have a land use attorney. And so we reached out, identified 4 other local land use attorneys, and we'll go through that to be advisors for DPL. Really, as we go through this due diligence process, sometimes you need legal advice on here's how we're interpreting, here's what it says, to be very so that we have a high level of confidence in what we say we do and to DPL, our evaluation. We'll talk more about that after. On Redmond, there is nothing significant there. You know, we have all of our approvals and that's moving forward. Under the design phase, sticking with Redmond, so we're at a 50% construction document phase. And for us, that is a point where we do a design review. It's kind of our final review of the plans before they go into city plan check. And so we want to get them as tight as possible. So that's a review by all of our consultants who are engaged in that process, by the contractor, Kirby, is going through that, as well as DPL. It's kind of, hey, here's the final chance to really make changes where hopefully we minimize future changes, which equal change orders. We went through a budgeting process on that and very comfortable that we're staying within our budget parameters. We looked at alternates as we continue to evaluate systems and how we're going to do stuff and kind of really fine tune that. And so very comfortable with where we're at on Redmond as far as it's advancing. Our design is what you've seen and what we're expecting. And we're really getting down to the nuts and bolts and the fine details. Design team and Kirby have had some really good work sessions. You know, we brought our DLT, which is the structural wood framing members, and we had them brought on board early, get in place in line. But they've had some really good work sessions to really start thinking about how all of the details are going to work out. So good to see how the team is really coming together there. Our solar PV system is also in the same boat. That's a design builder that we brought on early. So they're really looking at how we maximize the use of our dollars and get the most out of the system and make sure it's very functional. So that's been really good to have those subs on. So it's proceeding. You know, the big picture with Redmond would be that we plan to submit into plan check here in September. Miller Hall had conversations with the city planning or plan building department about plan check and what the timeline is and where that's going to go. And that's in alignment with our schedule. So we felt really good about that. The schedule we've laid out still looks really sound. Kirby has given us updated construction schedules with their budget that also align with our development schedule. So we're not seeing any movement from them saying, hey, this is going to take longer. They didn't also come back and say, hey, we can build it faster, which I would have liked that. You know, I think we still have a really good sound schedule that the contractor is really bought into. And they've done a very detailed construction schedule layout of parts and pieces. So, you know, I think the Redmond is in a really good position as we move forward. We will be setting what we call the initial GMP. And it's for a group of subcontractors, kind of like we did with the DLT and the solar and the fire sprinkler guys. The next group that we want to actually hire will be our MEP, so mechanical, electrical, plumbing trades, getting them on board, as well as our glulam beams and columns. And that's another wood element. Comes from a different supplier. But we're ready to buy those things and we're looking at our lead times. And we'll also buy demolition and grading and some of the site stuff. And this will happen here coming up in the fall. So there's no real action, of course, on the board's behalf at this point. But I do anticipate that we'll be coming here this fall with those approval requests after we go through that process. But that's something we're working on. The final GMP for Redmond will get set actually in the early spring. We want to wait as long as we can to get as many plan check comments from the city. Again, so we have a more complete set when we buy all balance of the trades. So it allows us to get some trades on early, secure long lead items again, get those going, and then wait on all the rest to make sure that we've got our most complete set, because then we're going to get the best pricing and use opportunities for changes. So Redmond is right at that stage. Sisters and La Pine, they're in plan check. So that was a great thing. We went into plan check on schedule here at the beginning of August, and that's in with the county on both of those. So that's basically a 90% complete construction document set. And we initially looked at waiting on setting our GMP, but there's a couple trades that we've looked at and want to award them early off of this current set. One specifically is mechanical systems, because of rising costs on mechanical equipment. Anticipated that suppliers are saying costs are going to be going up in the near future, so we want to get out and buy that. And the lead time, the duration to get that equipment, we want to get that on order. So we'll probably be bringing on the mechanical, plumbing, and electrical sisters of the pine, and then we'll do the main GP. The rest of the items, SunWest Builders, who's our CMGC on those, has advised that they don't see any other concerns, of all of the other subcontract trades and materials from availability and cost. So those are same kind of situation. We finalized all of the designs. Miller Hall is in the last aspect of getting it from 90% to 100%, which will roll in with the first round of plan check correction. So very excited about those. We approved the ordering the trailers for sisters last month. And so that all got put in place right after the board meeting. We released everybody. The order is in, and we've been working with the team to really fine tune so that trailers would be ready for setup here in probably December, in advance of closing the library and moving and making that switch. So that is really in pretty good shape. On La Pine right here, of course, our temporary space is across the parking lot or the road over here at Parks and Rec. And so the old library space, they're allowing us to utilize that. They have, they're in the process of making some changes to the space for us to use. We prepared a letter of intent for the lease on that. And that is actually with their board this week for approval. And so that is a short-term lease, just a one-year lease. Actually 10 months is what we've asked for, because it's just long enough for us to use it and then move right back in completion. So that's moving right along. So I think, all of these are the three projects that are really going to go under construction in January. And right now, all three of them are tracking well. Real happy with that. On Sunriver, you guys will see the Sunriver. We completed our schematic design, so it's the next level, and Miller Hall will present that today. We'll go through that, so that's moving along. That'll push out a ways because Sunriver follows East La Pine and Sisters. We have plenty of them. On Central Library, where we're at currently design-wise is Miller Hall is working on our conceptual designs. We did the test bits initially. Now they're really expanding on looking in and creating that design. So we've seen some progress drawings on that. Our plan is to present that to you guys in September so that you can see it. And I think they're really coming up with some creative designs that we've seen so far. They've really looked at how is the building going to fit on this piece of property, speak to the community, meet all of the DPL's needs, and how can we improve on some of that, right? One, we've got to make sure we can meet our construction budget. And so they're working closely with Kirby, Mayra, developing some cost estimates that we were looking at as we go through this process, and options that we will talk about on how we use the property. Are we going to use all of it or a portion of it? That was always a discussion we talked about that we wanted to analyze. And so we'll show you guys that analysis in September. And that way DPL and the board will be able to make a decision on the direction that we want to move forward with. And that's all part of that due diligence period, is to make sure everything's going to fit, how it's going to work. We've had conversations with the developer. Our team is talking to the developer's design team on how they're designing the streets around us and what that's going to be like, how they're going to deliver the property. And so that interface and interaction is ongoing and really healthy. You want the two teams to do that. We've had initial conversations with the city, so they know, so they can answer questions to us. We'll continue to do that over the next couple of months, so that we make sure that whatever we're planning is also in alignment with the developers' requirements and needs, the requirements of their master plan, and also what the city can give planning's input on this. So that's kind of all of the design work that's going on at this point. So I don't think there's really much else in my report, but I think that's all the activity. So questions, thoughts? Yes.
Greg, you mentioned city plan checks, county plan checks, and then in plan check corrections. Can you just kind of explain for basically what the plan check involves and what a correction may look like?
Yeah.
Just so I'm not familiar with that process.
Yeah. And so we work with different agencies in the city of Redmond, city of Bend. We'll work with those two cities. In Sisters, Lapine, and Sunriver, they contract out their plan check process, their building, to the county. So we'll work with both groups. When the plans go into either city or county, the plan check processes, they look a very detailed review of design for code compliancy, is they're really one of the primary things. They look at the design, so they'll evaluate structural design, and they're really checking our structural engineer to see. They actually submit like their structural calculations along with the plans, and they're back checking against them to see, does it make sense? Does it pencil out? Is it, really code compliant, safe? And that's the process that we go through in order to receive the permit, building permit. And so the city will go through a set of drawings, or the county, and we'll get plan check comments for architectural elements, structural, mechanical, electrical, from fire. Public Works will look at it if we're out touching any of their streets or utilities. They'll look at it and give us comments. So when we get all the city or county's comments back, the design team then has to review those comments and respond back, either correcting their plans, changing their plans, or providing more information back to the plan checker. And that process, we figure for 3 reviews in our schedule. So it goes in, you get the main one, and that sometimes can take a long time. The first review. And then it comes back, the architect usually takes 2 to 3 weeks, prepares a response and resubmits. And so we allow for 3 of those processes to get to a plan approval ready to issue permit.
Thank you.
If there aren't any other,
on the interest,
yes.
Does 5% is coming in? What kind of time frame is that? The 2 million, 390, is that for a year? Is that for 5 years? What is the interest period that they calculate that?
And I may need, if Robert's still online.
Yeah, Greg, I'm online. I can address that question if you like.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Piper Sandler, when they first sat down with Todd to structure how we would invest the bond money, created a series of bonds that each had kind of a rolling maturity date. And that was to take advantage of the fact that the timing of our investments were at a period of historically low interest rates, but that we were anticipating that over time interest rates would rise, which it turned out they did. So the current portfolio consists of something like 20 different bonds, each with a maturity date that lands about a month to 2 months apart over a period of about 2 years. So the overall interest on this wouldn't occur at the end of that final bond maturity. And as each bond comes to maturity, we make an assessment based on Greg's current cash flow projections about whether we need that bond to be cashed out and placed into our LGIP so that it's available for immediate construction project related needs, or whether we can reinvest it. And that's why we've seen the interest rate increase. That's why we've seen the interest return increase on this portfolio of bonds in the first place, because we had enough money set aside in the account to cover us for all of the plan period in anticipation of needing most of the cash during actual construction. So we've been able to reinvest it as interest rates have risen. And that's why you've seen this anticipated interest at maturity rise.
So the final maturity on these, the rolling investment is 2 years?
I think that the latest maturity on the final bond is something in late 2024. I want to say either August or September of 2024.
Okay, good. Thanks, Robert.
Yep.
And on the next paragraph is the master reserve. Where's the master reserve? I don't see a line item that says master reserve.
It's on page 1 of the cost summary, and it's the very last line.
So just reserve.
Yeah, it's called reserve contingency. I'm sorry, I said master reserve, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yes, it's the reserve contingency.
So it should be reserve contingency, not master reserve. Okay. But I missed something totally.
No, I used the wrong word.
Okay. Oh yeah. So I thought, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think I misunderstood you. You said the reserve contingency for 4,006,000, 4,007,000,
Yes,
is the interest.
it's primarily all from interest.
Primarily all interest.
Yeah, there was about I want to say 700,000 or so that we originally left in that contingency. When we did the reallocations out in each of the projects, we left some in here. And so when we did that, since then we've added to it the amount of the interest earned.
Okay.
Yeah,
so that's what.
And I think it's about 700,000 that we had in there. If I remember.
Okay, that's why the two figures are different.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Any other questions for Greg?
Yeah, do we need to do a PSA in order to do the due diligence? I thought what we agreed to last time. I read the minutes. It did say we did an LOI and the PSA. Correct. I thought our discussion was for the LOI.
It was for both. We executed the LOI and issued that because the developer had already signed it. And once we executed it, it triggered the attorney to draft the PSA.
Also,
so yeah. So that once we did that, then we gave that to Carrie Connolly at local law firm, and she drafted up the PSA agreement for us. We submitted that over to the developer, and because it was exactly what was said in the LOI, we literally wrapped it up in a couple days. Okay. And that became the document that is the formal purchase sale agreement and established that. Okay.
Then in Redmond, who gives the final approval for the project?
The city building department.
The building department.
Yeah. Because planning's already approved our site plan application. Planning does do a review, but it are construction documents. But ultimately, it's the building department.
Doesn't have to go to their city council.
No.
Okay. Any further questions?
I have two items
Yes.
on the agenda. So one is with the Roble property in ODOT.
Right.
We entered into the cooperative improvement agreement, the CIA.
And this is the memo I added to your packets today.
So part of that agreement was that we would transfer or donate, sell to ODOT the land that they need for the right of way of the Highway 20 improvements, which includes the road around. And so they, as part of their deal, was to appraise that property. We defined the property before we even what the right of way was when we were working on the property. And then they had a set way, and it was defined in the CIA, how they would go about appraising it, because they have a set rule that the state, they have to appraise all properties the same. They did that. They submitted those documents to us in June, right like the day before the June board meeting. And we got them, and these were the documents to formally transfer the land. I think the dollar amount, the value of the land is $177,000 and change of what we're transferring over to them. We reviewed these documents, and legal counsel reviewed them. Carrie had questions and comments, as we did. One of the things was in our original agreement, it anticipated we were going to build out the rural property, and we were going to build a bike trail that we're no longer building. And so we wanted to amend our agreement with ODOT to say we are no longer responsible to build the bike trail. They're doing it. It's on their vehicle. And the value of the appraised land that they're giving us was always under the agreement was intended to offset fees that we would pay ODOT for connecting to Highway 20 and to the roundabout. So they're not sending us a check, they're sending us call it a credit, right? A voucher, 177. We wanted to make sure it was really clear that those funds live with the property, and if we build in the future, we still get those credits. If we sell the property, those credits travel with it so that we can, because it creates value, right, for the district. And so we then spent the last month and a half working with ODOT to create this amendment to the agreement. And we finalized that with them this past week. And after a couple back and forth between DOJ and Kerry, but that's all done. So the request today is to authorize the library director to execute the documents and transfer the land is what it would be. And so we'd be executing the amendment to the original agreement and also executing the land transfer documents.
Okay.
So the value runs with the land.
It does.
Right. Okay. Any questions? Okay. I'd entertain a motion.
And I just noticed, based on what Greg just said, the sample motion I have there should say
And transfer the land.
It's to execute the cooperative improvement agreement and land transfer documents.
Okay.
Yes.
And I was so moved.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
The second item I had on there was the land use attorney. And that is to have approval for us to engage them primarily on Central Library. I don't think we need their assistance on anything else. We have a budget and it's not a huge cost. I think I put in there, I had a budget of about $30,000 because it's really very focused. Look at this, tell us, advise us on this. So it's authorizing the library director to execute that agreement to retain them. They'll be retained on an engagement letter basis, which is kind of the contract form you use with an attorney, and billed hourly, and we'll get hourly. So, like I said, we started out by talking with Carrie Connolly, local law government group. She didn't feel comfortable that she had the level of expertise that we should have, and recommended we find a local land use attorney. So we reached out to a couple people. So like Brooks Resources provided some names. We had some names of people we used. Identified 4 local land use attorneys, all here in Central Oregon, all very familiar with the Central Oregon land use laws and practices, and Bend in particular. One of the 4 happens to be the land use attorney for our developer, so we did, of course, not considering them. We've met her; she's a very knowledgeable person. But the other 3 all are interested in. We've had conversations with all of them, and just verifying that, one, they're available to work with us through due diligence and have interest. And so far, all 3 firms have expressed that. So we'll ultimately secure their proposals or information, review that with Todd and the team, and then make a final selection. So this is to allow Todd to execute on a new, bring it on an attorney.
And just to point out, because this is definitely a dollar amount that's within my spending authority, the reason we're bringing this to you is you actually have a policy that that I will not engage with legal counsel that's not legal counsel that the board approves outside of the approved one, which is local government law. So as you see, that's because local government law can't cover that. That's why we.
Okay.
Can you tell us who the 3 are, or that would not be appropriate yet?
I don't think it'd be appropriate yet. I can tell you they're all recognized local firms, all based in Bend. So.
Any further questions? I'd entertain a motion.
Also moving.
I'm sorry.
Do you want a second, Cynthia?
I'll second Cynthia's.
Okay.
I'll move it.
All right.
And just because it's on the Zoom recording, I'll say that was you move to authorize the library director to execute a contract with the selected legal firm to provide land use legal services for the Stevens Ranch project.
Okay. All right. It's been moved and seconded. Did you get that, Lori? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. All right. Okay, next up is Miller Hall with the Sunriver schematic design.
Yeah, so we're really excited to bring this to you. Doing a lot of work on what it could look like in Sunriver. So I'm going to turn it over to Ruth and Matt.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Glad to see the power's back on. I know yesterday was exciting when we were down there. So hopefully everyone's in good shape today. And we'll be pretty concise here with Sunriver to give you a bit of an update on where we are. What you're seeing on the screen is a site plan of the current library. And I know you're all very familiar with that location. The Venture Lane, that kind of circular drive, is kind of on the right-hand side of the page. And that existing parking lot is where Matt's kind of got that cursor. And then the building is in the lower left corner of the image. With some of the site improvements that we're making there are pretty strategic. They're not all encompassing, but really will impact the users' kind of convenience and navigating of that site. So what you are seeing, I'm going to kind of point out a few things. We're improving the condition when you enter the parking lot from kind of the furthest west entry. Right now, when you pull in that way, it's a little bit confusing, and the existing meeting room door almost feels like the front door. So what we're doing to kind of clarify that for people who come to the library is make a few adjustments in the landscape and with site walls in that area that kind of make that a little bit more clear. So we don't continue to have users come up to the meeting room door thinking they're entering the library. We will have an outdoor book drop there for people to pull into, holding, kind of a holding parking spot that's just for pulling up, darting over, putting the book drop, putting books in the book drop and heading out. And that, so I think that's one key improvement that will really benefit users outside. The other thing we're working on is thinking about the, how lighting and concrete, et cetera, can kind of really make that, entry piece more clear. So in addition to improving, that existing meeting room entry, which will now be the staff entry, working on the character of the landscaping, the lighting, so that it performs a little bit better and it's more notable when you walk up to the front door. Thanks, Matt. You're doing a great job.
Sure. I was just going to chime in that this gray toned area, we did identify that there were some areas with the accessible parking stalls needed some improvement to come up to code. And so it really is, in addition to providing a concrete pad for this new book drop location, this whole curb is going to be improved in order to get some of those ADA accessible stalls kind of up to code. And then there's adjustments to the main entry. Again, as Ruth mentioned, landscaping that is going to make the visibility of this main entrance more apparent. Okay.
Yeah, and then when we go to the interior, again, some really strategic moves that are going to improve, the user experience and the staff's ability to deliver great service. So again, I know you're all familiar with the building, but I'll just kind of recap. The current staff area is in a spot where, it's an incredibly low ceiling. It's incredibly tight. And things are kind of happening all on top of each other. They really are not able to deliver the caliber of service in that space. So one of the things we're doing is we're relocating the staff and right-sizing their space to perform their functions in what is the current meeting room. So that's why that new book drop location outside, that staff entry, works really well from a book drop, loading, deliveries perspective. And so we have reconfigured that existing meeting room to be a staff area. And what that also does is it frees up space in the main part of the library to do a couple really great things. Number one, we're positioning the children's area in that former workspace. And what's really great about that is it kind of gives it its own little spot. It's a lower ceiling height. it helps contain the exuberance of the children, but it also gives just a more overt identity to the area that's theirs. Because right now, if they're part of that kind of big, open, tall space, their excitement and their kind of traffic flow, et cetera, kind of bleeds into the whole library. So I think that's a really great new improvement. And then one of the issues with the current meeting room is that it's very hard to supervise, if not impossible. And so it just makes it a little tougher to schedule and program in a way that the library can kind of monitor and use that space really well. And so what we're doing here is putting the meeting room out in the open. So it's part of the larger library experience, and it really can start to be used all day. So maybe there's a program in it, maybe someone has reserved it for, you know, a specific function, but when that's not the case, the sliding doors can be pulled all the way open, and that room can really just act as an extension of the entire library. So we really feel like we've added, in some ways, added square footage here to the library, even though we haven't expanded the building per se. And we have configured this so that this meeting room that we're looking at, as well as the little tutor room, both of those are available after hours. And so we still are retaining that after hours function that I think everyone, you know, knows is really valuable. We've just kind of configured it in a way that it can be useful really in a lot of different scenarios. So that's exciting. We've still got the fireplace that everyone kind of knows and loves right there in the same spot. And then we're using the kind of that big kind of, you know, it's quite a lovely space, that tall exposed structure, lovely daylight, you know, interior, and reconfiguring shelving, computers, seating, so that it really starts to have some of that new refreshed character that all, you know, we've been seeing in the other designs we've been showing you. So I think those are kind of the big highlights.
Okay, Ruth, I had a question.
Sure.
With the staff being in the former meeting room, where, and I know that staff desks are kind of thing of the past, but where does the public access the staff? I mean, how do they interact?
Yeah. Great question. Thank you. What we are, and I know Lynn can, you know, articulate this much better, but what the DPL is trying to do system-wide is to establish a condition where all the staff are mobile. They're not kind of parked at a desk waiting for the public to come to them. They're actually fully mobile, you know, with a tablet, walking around, actively interacting and engaging with people. So number one, that's, you know, a very personable kind of relationship building strategy. It also frees up square footage that historically was devoted to like a very large kind of, you know, bank teller desk, if you will.
Right. So they'll primarily be roaming, but will there be a service point where people who come in who have no clue can say, I need a card?
That service point is going to be that person.
That person, okay.
That person is your service point. They will have, there will be some mobile stations. We just haven't like landed on any furniture that was clean and browsing. But yes, there will be someone in the library proper, as I call this, at all times in the library. We won't have to go try and hunt anything.
Okay. Yeah,
and there will be like a point of service where like a touchdown.
Right.
I think, Ruth, that's your word.
Yes, that's a great word.
Yeah, it's good thing to remember for the other libraries, because right now you're not seeing those in the other libraries because we are still kind of landing on what that touchdown station
what that looks like. Okay, well, I know that that's a more effective way to deliver service. So
I have a question, Ruth. I didn't see where with the tutor room and the community room and all, how you get access during the evening when the library is not open.
Can you see the red lines I just drew, Bunny? That's a great question. Thank you for asking for clarification. There's a dotted line on our floor plan, which shows where a drop-down gate occurs in the ceiling, and that'll come down after hours so that you can't get into the rest of the library, but you can still come in the front door and have access to the restrooms, that lobby area, and the 2 meeting areas.
I see. Okay. So you would access the community room via where it says kitchenette and those doors. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Got it. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Right. Any other questions?
Yeah, Ruth?
Hi, Ray.
How many parking spaces will there be an increase in the number of parking spaces or the same number?
No, same number.
Same number. And how many handicap spaces?
You know, that's a good one too. And that's a request, that number is a code requirement.
Okay. So, and what's the size of the new kids room versus the present one that we have?
Oh, good question. I might have to go and tally that for you, Ray. I don't know. I don't have that number offhand, but we can easily calculate it.
It's an increase.
Oh, I think it has increased significantly. If I recall from when we were there, when we started this project, the kids area was kind of designated over in this corner, and maybe Lynn can kind of correct me if I'm wrong, but like essentially we're like looking at a space that is now this blue box versus kind of a quasi dedicated kids area in that corner. Is that right, Lynn?
That's pretty good. And Ann is over there a lot too. She's shaking her head yes. So that's right, Mark. I think you got it, Matt.
Good. And when do you anticipate the capacity of the meeting room?
Right now we're showing in kind of a lecture format. We're showing, let's see, 5 rows of 735. And that's just one, you know, configuration.
Yeah. But the opening.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, so those sliding doors will open so that the opening between those two will allow for, during kind of library hours, you know, the expansion into the library space if there was a desire for a larger audience. But right now, comfortably 35 is the layout that we have kind of in this lecture style layout.
So if you do open it up during library hours, how do you ensure that everybody else using the rest of the library isn't affected by the meeting?
I think that would be on a case-by-case basis, Ray. We have seen this be successful in many libraries, and it's a great way to make sure none of your real estate essentially is sitting underutilized. And so what usually happens is if there is a program that has a lot of, you know, noise associated with it, absolutely the door would be closed. However, if there's no program and gosh, we just need more seating space, more study space, the doors are open and it just acts like kind of a seamless, just another portion of the library. I think the condition that Matt was just describing is, oh man, once a year we have this really, really special event. We're going to pack them in and we're going to have, you know, 70 people attending something. The doors open. You're able to make that meeting room bigger. And it would just be an understanding at that particular time that the library is having that event. That's what's happening. And so that's just kind of part of how it would be communicated and users would understand it was a special situation. I don't know, Lynn or Chantal, if you have other examples.
Yeah, very similar to what we do now. We do that in Redmond. We'll have programs in the lobby. It's rare, but it's something that we have to kind of make a conscious decision that at this point, this is the main event for this building. People can still access materials, but it's going to be a different experience.
So it's announced.
Yeah.
And similar to having music, I would assume.
Yes.
When we bring in chamber music or whatever types of
We just did that last week in the Pine.
Oh, I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, they were in the adult area, the space between the computers and the, and we've done that many, many times. And no complaints, we get more compliments that people stop in to pick up a hold and they hang out for about 10 minutes where they were just gonna run anyway. And do give comments to staff.
I think it kind of adds to the interest of going to the library. You kind of don't know what you'll find when you get there.
Right.
It's lots of different experiences.
Knowing what you're going to find is.
We're really excited about this approach because we've seen the success of it definitely in the Redmond Library. And like Kathy, thanks for sharing. Your experience last week was wonderful in La Pine, and it just invites people in to a program because often people think if the door is closed, they're not part of it, they're not able to participate. So it's just another way to include people and to extend our programming out into the main library. And it's very effective.
Have we had this type of performance in anything besides music?
We had a stand-up comedian, Chantal. Oh, Chantal, do you remember several years ago, we had a stand-up comedian. And we did that out there. I can't remember who read. I can't remember his name. It's been a couple of years.
Buttons.
It wasn't Red Buttons. He is showing that. Yeah. No, but yeah, mostly it's music.
So we haven't had anything where somebody's been having
I'm sorry, I couldn't do the question.
You have any experience with somebody giving a lecture?
A lecture? Sure. Yeah, we've done this with authors, with presenters. Again, Redmond has had the most of this, but we've also done it in downtown Penn Library. I mean, we've been trying to do more of it at our different branches. Sunriver primarily, we've done music like this, where we would try to bring like the carolers or the bells out into the main area of the library. And so what's really nice about this is that it's connected to the meeting room where we can have the program really organized well, but then it can kind of spill naturally out into a bigger space. So this for us, just as programmers, works really well instead of just kind of a random thing, because it'll be tied in with the meeting room. So it can be organized, but then flow out. And yeah, we think it's going to function very well. After hours, it would not necessarily be open unless it's a library program. And then we will be there to staff the building and we will determine what makes sense or not. If it's just for the community use and there's not a library program person there, then that door would remain closed as part of the security for the building.
So do we need policy then to state when some organization could use the larger area?
Well, that'll all be part of our meeting room policy, and we already have a lot of meeting room policies. And so each branch is different and we kind of go branch by branch, but we do have an overall meeting room admin rule, et cetera, that's always looking at these kinds of things.
So that'll cover this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what's the stack capacity versus the present one?
Yeah, we're still working through that with Lynn and Emily and some of the collection staff as they're working through their recategorization of the materials and understanding kind of, what does the collection want to be? So that's still in progress, Ray.
So we're shooting for more shelf space in the present?
I would have to defer to Lynn and Emily because and I'm not hedging. I'm actually just there were even new spreadsheets that came in today as the library is kind of analyzing the collection for like the entire system and what of it wants to be at this location.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's still in the works, so can't really give you an absolute answer on that. But the hope is that the remodel changes, new classification system, circulation, that we have the constant churning of all of our materials all the time. So we'll never be able to say that this lives here all the time, that we have, 50% of our collection, that's the holy grail for me. 50% of our collections are out and circulating at any given time.
I'm just looking at the shelf space.
And again, we have to count it up right, so I don't have an answer.
Okay. So that's
Still in the works, yep.
Okay. And the final question, staff room size versus the present amount of space they have?
Yeah, that has increased, Ray, because the space, I don't know if you've ever been in that space, but it is shockingly substandard for what they're trying to accomplish. The ceiling height is actually borderline not okay. And so they're not able to function with and to provide the level of service that you all expect from your branches in the space they have. So that it has gotten larger.
And I'm sorry, it's break room also, right?
There's a separate break room.
Where will the staff be bringing books in and managing books? Is it in that old, the original
meeting room?
Okay, so it'll be set up for that.
Yeah, so that what Matt's pointing to right now, there's a little covered patio there right now. And so that will become the new staff entrance, and all the loading and deliveries, et cetera, will come and go through that door. And so that's going to be an improvement also.
Okay.
Great. So in this,
go ahead.
Oh, in the new staff area, again, there will be a dedicated break room with their kitchenette for the staff areas. The supervisor will have an enclosed office that is contiguous with the staff area. Currently, it's kind of right across the hall from the main entry. A larger area for kind of sorting and kind of receiving and distributing books in this area, and then a dedicated restroom for staff that will be added. And then right here is the internal book drop for visitors who are coming into the library who have books to return. Within the lobby, they can drop them off here, and then the staff will now have a dedicated access to those books to like check them in and then put them back out on the shelves.
Matt, can you go back to the outside schematic? I know in the past there's been some concern about the entry in snow and just how that's handled in taken care of. It just on either side of the main entry, that looks like there's just kind of a small space there. Just wondering how that will.
Yeah, we have seen photos of the large snowfalls that not only fall in Sunriver, but also as it comes off of the roof, kind of deposits itself. And so we have had a number of conversations with Robert about that. And I know we were also talking about providing snow melt, right, Matt? And so that will also improve the safety of your approach to the front door, just day in and day out.
Yeah, so the 2 ADA parking spots are going to be right front and center at the main entrance to the library. And what we're looking at studying is kind of a pathway that gets you to those 2 spots that would have a snow melt system within that kind of entry all the way to the main front door, so that even in a snow condition, that pathway would be cleared automatically. And the same thing goes for the staff who have to bring in the books from the book drop. There's kind of a short little pathway that needs to have snow melt so that it's easy to bring that book bin in. This whole area is covered, so it doesn't need the snow melt because the roof will take care of that. But again, a much shorter distance for the staff to bring in those bins from the book drop. Currently, they're pulling them in quite a distance. Oh, I think I have to stop drawing. Here, oh, I need to clear my thing. But the book drop currently is out in this location here, and they're bringing it all the way down that kind of drive area. Let me clear my drawing.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy nor necessarily safe in all weather conditions. So this will be a big improvement.
Yeah, the book drop right now is in this location, and they're having, with no snow melt, to pull those bins all the way into the staff area there. And we've heard that they've had some issues just kind of dragging that book bin, that heavy book bin, through kind of inclement weather.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that this shorter stretch is going to be an improvement for them, plus the snow melt.
Would you consider having that entire walk area snow melt?
It is a fairly costly proposition, and also kind of from an energy standpoint, kind of heating more area is something that I think we want to be just judicious about how much we provide. We certainly want to provide kind of clear pathways for people, but it does come at a cost premium. We also are determining, because we're adding this, there is existing electrical panels in the building, and what we need to determine is, because this is probably the largest snowmelt system that we have of the Lapine Sisters branches, we also want to make sure that we don't get too big that it would trigger us to require to expand the electrical panel loads that we currently have. That becomes a very cost expensive thing if we had to add another panel. Yeah.
Well, and I would think most of the time you're not dealing with like big groups of people that are coming in 3 or 4 abreast. You're dealing with 1 or 2 people coming in at a time. So
right.
And we do have a company that comes in and clears everything.
Right.
So
yeah.
This is just the common pathways.
Right. Any other questions? Okay, we have a sample motion here regarding.
I move to approve the overall site plans and major components outlined in the architect's presentation on the Sunriver Library facility.
Do you hear a second? I'll second. Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Great, thank you so much. Those plans are exciting. Some big improvements ahead.
Thank you. It's great to see everyone. Thanks for your time today.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you.
Okay, next up is management practices.
Yes. So our annual management practices report. And every year I kind of provide this to you, kind of giving you a sense of what we're doing. Especially around sorry, I'm getting the 2 reports mixed up in my head here, so I gotta go read.
Yeah, right. Which one is this?
Oh, here it is. Especially I want to highlight the conforming to contemporary management practices and developing a collaborative management at the library. And so I listed some of the things we're doing, but I didn't feel like it really gave you a good sense of what's going on, because we've been doing some really innovative and exciting things over the last year. And so I've asked Sarah Brang, hopefully you're out there, Sarah, to kind of highlight 1 or 2 things that we are actually doing right now. And Sarah, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you for having me on today. It's been a few years since I have actually seen everyone in person, so I apologize for not being down in Lapine of course, we all are busy and there's a lot of.
Hey.
Sorry, Sarah is our learning and development manager, program manager for the district. Sorry, put in context of what we're talking about. So go ahead, Sarah. Sorry about that.
I was actually just on my way to say I haven't seen you in person in a while, and it was probably when I introduced myself the first time as a learning and development program manager. So perfect, Todd. Yeah, so I have done a lot of work over the last several years working with the management team and really trying to help get information from our staff members and looking at employee engagement surveys. And I think you are all aware, one of the things that the entire management team and organization has really focused on over the last couple of years is how to increase trust between employees and supervisors and managers and really create an environment where everyone feels included, that their voice is heard, and just really a part of the mission and the organization. So one of the things that was implemented recently, probably 4 or 5 months ago, was an employee advisory committee. And the employee advisory committee is kind of grounded in its purpose of having a set of employees on a committee without supervisors. So we don't have kind of the leadership saying, here's what we think staff are feeling or saying or wanting, but really inviting employees at all across the district, having representation across the district to come together. We meet every other month, and I chair the committee just to help facilitate. We have Todd on the committee as a representation from the management team, because aside from having employees, they want a voice and they want to be heard and they want to feel that they are included and understand what's going on in the district. They also really want a connection, and connection is key when you're looking at building trust. So Todd is a part of the committee, and his role is to come to the committee, bring up different projects or programs or questions that come up where we need employee feedback. Instead of kind of working in a bubble that sometimes happens because we get super busy with what we're doing and focused, we are now really, really trying to step back and say, have we asked those questions? Do we truly know what employees would think of this? So we have 6 members of the six employees sitting on the committee, and that represents staff out in the branches, that represents staff here in admin, and it also represents our librarians who are out in the community. So we do have good representation and diversity and inclusion in that. And Todd will come and ask for ideas and opinions, and they will give that to them. He will then report back to the management team, here's some of the findings, and it's a feedback loop. So he'll come back and say, here's what was discussed. It's also a really great opportunity for the staff members to say, hey, I've heard a lot of people saying XYZ, so that we have this connection between what's kind of going on and feeling that and filtering that back up to the management group, because again, everybody's really busy. And we've had several meetings going really well. Everyone is excited. When we had Todd join the group, it was the trust level really increased, because it's now a feeling of, wow, you really do want our opinion. You do value what we have to say. And so it's something that is still evolving. And of the 6 members, the way that we have it right now is everybody sits for 2 years. And the first group, the first year we'll have kind of rotating a little bit like you would any committee or board, where there's a handful that'll be on for a year and they can reapply if they want to be on it again. But we're gonna kind of rotate out every couple of years so that we have good representation and allow others to be a part of it and speak and share their ideas as well. And we recently brought in the group as part of the strategic planning when we were looking at what does a strategic plan look like and our vision and our mission. And we had brainstorming and everybody was in the room, and we invited them because we wanted to make sure we didn't just hear from supervisors and managers. We wanted to hear from employees who have their boots on the ground and are out there working every day. So yeah, it's been really effective so far, and we're excited. And it's just going to be one of many things that will be implemented to kind of build and connect trust and just make really the organization kind of the best place to work in Deschutes County. That's my goal anyway.
I think just to tack on to Sarah, these other things that I've listed are all things Sarah's involved in, including the employee engagement survey, which we're about to take part again this August. And some really exciting, Sarah's done some great work around these town hall events. And that's where we take a subject and we talk with every staff person, usually through a series of about 5 or 6 different groups of people to really make sure that we are connecting.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Sarah?
Want to say that again?
About the town hall meetings?
Yeah.
Oh, that's just a way for us to connect with staff and get their input on, especially on some meaningful topics, so that we're getting everybody's voice.
It sounds like some really valuable work that is bearing good fruit. Those points of connection are really important, and it sounds like you found some really good ways to make those happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions for Sarah?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so Sarah, the way I'm hearing this is you have 6 employees on a rotating basis. And with Todd, yourself, you have discussions. Todd brings that information and the feedback up to the management team. Where does it go from there?
Yeah, we're trying to create really this feedback loop, and it really depends on what is discussed. So there could be times where feedback, they might just want to inform the management team of something, or it might be, here's feedback, and Todd would say, I'm going to go discuss it with the management team at our next meeting, and then I'm going to come back and share those outcomes. Everything is documented, so we have a different member taking minutes at each of the meetings, and then those get posted out to all staff so that there's the transparency there of what is being discussed. And I want to emphasize the fact that it really kind of depends on what we are talking about, what feedback we're getting. There might be times where something comes up and we're not quite sure, maybe does it warrant a town hall? Does it warrant a survey? Or we're not really sure. And in those cases, this is a really great group to go to kind of get some of that feedback. And so that feedback loop and the next steps of communication are going to be dependent on the specifics of whatever it is that's being discussed, if that makes sense.
No, that's good. Yeah. And how are the employee members selected or elected? Or?
Yeah, we ended up, we created a charter that talked about what the purpose of the group is, how it would be put together. And we went out to all employees with an interest form and basically said, are you interested in this? We didn't necessarily want to start choosing people because I know a lot of staff, but I don't know everyone. And I don't know, some people are quiet, but they really might want to have a voice. So we just went out and said, if you're interested, fill this out. And what we're going to do is we know the functional groups that we're trying to fill. And that was based on the number of employees that we have, trying to make sure that there's kind of equal representation across the district in some of those functions. So we gathered everyone, and then we used a kind of a random picker that if we've got all 10 names in there, it was a random drawing so that we weren't favoring, and it wasn't Sarah choosing the person that she likes best, but it was taking everybody that was interested in serving and pulling those names out of there. Some of the people were actually nominated by their peers. So we went to them if they were chosen and said, you were nominated, is this something that you're interested in? And then they said yes or no, and we put the committee together that way. And Todd reviewed the employees just to make sure, that there weren't any disciplinary actions or anything going on that, any red flags, but we didn't. Fortunately, we have got some great employees, so we didn't have any issues.
Is there union representation on this?
So this committee is completely separate from the union. And it actually is written into the charter that anything that's going to fall within the union stays within the union. This is really just advisory, giving comments and feedback and making sure that employees have a voice on district-wide projects. And that could be everything from the strategic plan I talked about that we just went over, but anything that falls within the union would stick with that group because they have their own group that reviews that information.
Okay.
Very nice.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sarah. We appreciate the information.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. You guys have a lovely day.
You too.
Bye.
Just to point out, one of the last things we have in here is just that there's some points about personnel rules. That's something that we actually spend a lot of time, and I say we, our HR department, spends a lot of time updating those, especially after we complete a collective bargaining agreement, which we did this year. So we've done a lot of work updating those rules and getting those up to staff this year. My conclusion of all this is that we are in compliance with the management practices and executive relations policy.
Any further questions for Todd, or we entertain a motion?
I will so move.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Passes.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the collective.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay, so now we have the anti-harassment policy signatures from the board.
And this is one we just wanted to update these as we did have board members do this in 2020, and it's based on the new state law. Well, it's 2 years old now. And where it includes all employees, so our employees sign these as well. And I just want to include the board. And I can answer any questions as best I can. Otherwise, if it's clear, we are just looking for your signature. Did I give you a signature document?
Yes.
Oh, yes, in the back.
back.
Yes, in the back. Scared me. There's any questions if there are.
So I think the action item here is just to make sure Lori gets your signed copies. Or if you have any questions for Todd on this, I just had to go through a training for the state on this, so I'm up on this, and they were very clear about this. Does include board members, so it's good that we're signing these. Okay. And next is monitoring report on the treatment of library customers.
Yeah, so I've given you again my assessments. One of the pieces. No, I'm sorry, my brain keeps jumping to different rules there. A lot of the work around this falls on Lynn. And so other than my dry report here, I was just asked Lynn to kind of give us add some color to this and maybe give us a sense of what's going
on. Yeah, so for the treatment of library customers, again, nothing has dramatically changed from prior reports. We still have a customer code of conduct, a customer service charter. We review those on an annual basis, if not more. And there's a lot of training that goes into this, starting with our supervisors and then for public services staff. We do this on a regular basis. The other part of the treatment of library customers, which speaks to the confidentiality, is one thing that all library employees take our customer confidentiality and their privacy we take very seriously. So we do only ask for those identifiable things that we need in our library cards, just the basic information. If we don't need driver's licenses or social security numbers, we do not ask for that. The other thing too, I don't think Mark is on today, but Mark also takes very good care of our security and all of our public PCs, our staff PCs, and all in our network in Remington. Great shout out to them because they're constantly monitoring for any kind of attacks or bugs or anything, watching that and keeping our data secure. As for suggestions and what we have for our customers, if they have feedback for us, is we do have the good old suggestion box. We have those in every single one of our branches. We also have a link on our website, the webmaster link, and hopefully you've at least seen that every once in a while when you've done on our public web page. It goes directly to Wiley and or Dylan, and then they forward all of those suggestions to the appropriate manager, supervisor, or staff person. The other thing we do, we have our staff emails and phone numbers attached for managers and supervisors, so you can be contacted at any time. And we also have the opportunity for our public to fill out requests for reconsiderations. That's part of the collection development report that we get from Emily later in the year. And also a request for considerations for different services and programs. So if someone is, didn't like the beer program, then they can let us know through filling out a form, or if they have additional programs that they would like why are you, why not wine, then we can do that. I'll stop there and see if anybody has any questions.
Lynn, what kinds of, do you notice any trends in the issues that library staff have to deal with? I mean, post-pandemic or just in general? Are there common themes? And are there things that are getting worse or things that are getting better?
Yeah, I was gonna say, in a lot of ways, having to deal with masks has been a huge relief for everyone, not having to try and enforce that. So I would say, and I'm looking at Mayra, she's shaking her head too. She dealt with some of the very similar things in Las Vegas, probably times 10.
Yeah.
So again, I don't think there's any different trends. There's still the majority of our customers that come in, they're happy, they want to be there, they're excited, they enjoy interacting with their families, other staff, and but as far as trends go, nothing that is out of the ordinary that we haven't already experienced. Some of it may have increased a little bit, but it's still just, again, it's the same type of things that we had pre-COVID. Again, with the mask being gone, it's been awesome that we don't have to do that kind of enforcement, if you will. That's been a big relief.
And are we getting very many suggestions?
Not lots, no. In fact, I have not seen them. No, we get some. The supervisors check it on a regular basis, on a weekly basis. Box. The webmaster, it's been mostly, can you renew my book? Or I saw one today. We accidentally packed. We're moving. We packed our library books, and I don't know where they are. Really run of the mill. I would love to give you some really juicy ones.
Well, no, I'm glad we don't have any really juicy ones. It's
challenges.
Yeah, I would say that's more in the culture development.
Any other questions?
No, people happy with feedback?
Yes, I think so. And again, that's for a later date, and we're working on our Oregon State Library statistics right now. They're in October, but very happy with what we're seeing as far as statistical numbers are, just anecdotally. But yeah, our numbers go back to pre-COVID and surpassing COVID, so it's very exciting.
Have we had a lot of people coming in during the heat wave?
I would say more than usual. I'm looking at Kathy too. She's that supervisor sitting here.
Somewhat. We had people coming in to cool off a bit, but I wouldn't say we have open the meeting room. But we have hosted in all of our locations, school centers throughout the county. So people check the board.
So they knew we were available.
And I also think our county and all of our different cities have done a really good job this year of providing food centers. I think more so than they have in the past. I'm really surprised. It's like 5 or 6 of them are in Denver, one used to be like 1 or 2.
After that being death in Portland.
Yeah.
And we're listening. work with the county, so we're listed with them as a community.
Yeah, I mean, historically, we were the Cooley Center pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
Yeah.
And so this is work we've been doing forever, and it's good that there are alternative.
Also, the movie theaters.
Yeah.
For free.
I wish for free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Lynn.
Okay.
By the way, next year you'll have the people come in.
Yeah, all right, we'll look forward to it. You can be your annual staff meeting.
This would be a tough one.
Do I'd entertain a motion on the monitoring report?
I'll move. Again,
Okay,
I'll second.
yes.
okay. The motion is that the library is in compliance with executive limitations policy 3I. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Now we're down to our discussion of our election zones, which we are required to do every 10 years based on the results of the 2020 census. So, Todd, do you want to
Just point out, I did add a new resolution. I had a typo on zone 3. It's precinct 23. It's supposed to be there, not precinct 2. So just that was corrected. So the real piece that we need to do when we're looking at this is make sure that we're in balance. And as I mentioned here, in the last 10 years, we have, with the change in population and voters, we have a 7,051 difference between our largest zone and our smallest. And the goal is to get those as even as possible.
Well, I think the number one thing that jumped out at me was that we've had 54,000 people move to this county in the last 10 years, which is kind of staggering.
That's just registered voters.
That's just registered voters.
Yeah,
but, I mean,
there have been more people, but yes.
And majority of these people moved to what part of Bend or what area?
The areas that, well, they've all the areas have grown. So if you'll see on table 1, that was a breakdown in 2012. And our largest zone was zone 2, which centered in Sisters. And
no.
Yeah, sorry, I can't do numbers.
Zone 4.
Zone 3, which is
Zone 4.
fine, 18, for anyway. They were all around 18,000 people, and now we're looking at around 30,000 people. And so it's significant growth all over.
What's our zones of Jersey?
Yeah.
Well,
No, it's not.
Yeah.
City.
No, it's not by city. So a couple of things to see that right now, as I said, we're about 7,000 off. When I looked at this, because as Ray and Ann probably remember, this was we had a lot of work to do last time because it was way off all over the place. And so I was getting prepared for that. And then I just looked and saw if we moved one precinct from Redmond to the Sisters and one precinct from Sisters to La Pine Sunriver, or from 1 to 2 to 3, we are basically there. And so I wanted to put that proposal in front of you. That I did talk with the county clerk today, and he was impressed that that we were able to get it in that balance. So that was a good sign to hear from him. Basically, we'd be only 1,500 off, which in most cases, most of the zones are between 3 and 5. Well, they've got one zone precinct that has 5,000. So that was my recommendation, and that's it basically takes. Well, let's see if I get the map up here. But basically, that that is one way to go. And I kind of leave it up to the board if you want to delve into this deeper and really look at some other way to do it. We can. I think from my point of view, it's kind of like I wasn't doing this as a gerrymander. I was doing this as a, how can we just balance it? And anyway, that seemed to be a good solution that really gets us basically averaging around 30 to 31,000 for each of these songs.
Yeah, I was impressed that the numbers came out as close as they did, and the map.
And this map, I'll point out, is the old map. Right. We need to update the new ones. That I did in talking with the clerk. They have adjusted their precincts based on a couple of things, based on the fact that the state just went in and reconfigured a lot of precincts. So that's affected some things. One of the biggest ones you'll see is precinct 10, which is that huge area that goes all the way up to Alfalfa, is dropped from 844 down to 46 people in that time period. And so that has a little bit to do with the way they adjusted some boundaries, but also just what's going on with the population.
Hard because we have to work with existing precincts.
Yes.
So that's a constraint. You can't just draw lines.
Yeah, I did take a quick look. The most kind of outstanding one we have is, you'll see in the city of Bend, there's just this little island of zone 2 sitting out there. And I did just take a quick look at that. And it's such a large number that it would throw things off to move it.
Oh, that little in East Bend.
Yeah, that's 34. That, yeah, so that one is one that has 4,500 people on it. So,
Todd,
anyway,
will this change what any of us that are currently on the board, where we run from? We all of a sudden are not in our district anymore?
That's a great question. When I was talking to the county clerk today, he asked the same question and at the same time said, and I can tell you that answer in 5 minutes. So he went and looked you all up. This would not affect any existing board members.
Oh, okay.
It's just, which saves us a real conundrum of you don't have representations.
Yeah, and I mean, it's by just moving single precincts from one to the next. I mean, it's a pretty minimal.
Yes, trust me, this is one that I've been writing for 3 months, and then when I sat down and looked at it, I was shocked that there was a solution that was that easy. So.
Well, you're lucky those 2 precincts are on the boundary.
Yes.
The zones.
Right.
And like 34.
So if you do decide to go that way, I have set out a resolution for you, and then we would turn that into the county clerk.
I think, with the present zones and the precinct distribution, I've never heard anybody come back and say, why am I represented in this case? So, somebody else. So, by and large, it's worked very well for the public.
Well, I would entertain a motion if people feel comfortable with that.
I move to approve resolution 13, assigning precincts to library board election. I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Since you're so good at getting through that, I have a present for you. I don't have any central library land updates, so we do not need to go through an executive session.
Okay.
I put that in there just in case something came up. So,
all right.
Sorry, I should have said that at the beginning.
It could be a new speed record for the last 2 years. Okay, how about we still have library news?
Okay, I've got show and tell. One, Lori's going to hand that to you. You've seen in our every month we do a different no theme.
Yes.
And we thought you might be interested to know what the themes are for this year.
All right.
So let's see.
No soup for you.
And then our CR department has been doing some great work with video programs. I sent you one on the summer with the library. And so I thought I'd share a couple of very short ones for you here. Let's see if I can get this to go. Here. All right, Zoom. Oh, fun. Okay. Share screen.
Is that one you use one?
I think so. Let's see if this works. Oh, why is it not coming out to the It's not coming out to the speaker. Are you on Zoom?
You can hear it.
Just highlighting, we've talked a little bit about the discovery passes, but it's a great way to get that message out to people simply. And let me see if I get one more for you. Okay. Here. This is actually one that's running. We don't get any money from Verba for this. I'll skip ads. Oh, screen. Sorry, I'm leaving Bunny out of this. Sorry, Bunny.
Or somebody told you about a book that they read once, you can find it in the library. Libraries have everything you need.
Okay, there you go. A couple quick advertisements, and that's my library news.
All right. Great.
Ah, sorry. Sorry.
When we go, this is one of the most popular, greatest hits.
No.
That was exciting. Okay. Foundation news. I really don't have any. We're meeting, we're working on things, but nothing momentum to bring forward today. So critical communications, are there any things that arose from today's meeting that we need to communicate with the public?
I don't have any recommendations from anyone.
Okay. All right, self-review of the meeting. Bunny, do you want to start first since you are the furthest, you came the furthest.
Yeah, I did. Let's see. I thought it was a good meeting. I'm shocked that we got through so fast, which is nice. Yes, it was interesting. The what do you call the monitoring portions of it, and then again, thank you, Todd, for spending the time to redo our zones so well. So I think it was a great meeting.
Right, thank you. And
I concur, it's a great meeting. I do want to say I'm excited to have Mayra on board. It sounds like you're bringing a wealth of experience and knowledge. So welcome and excited to have you here.
Cynthia?
I'd like to second that. Lynn spoke so highly of you. She was so excited. So I'm excited that you're part of the team too. I really appreciated Sarah's presentation. I think that's fantastic. That was something we did in my elementary school, just to keep communications going and talking about issues. I think it's a wonderful project that we do.
Right.
I agree with that. So, employee advisory committee is a great idea. It will be very helpful. And I guess next month we're doing
the employee engagement survey.
Yeah, engagement survey.
Yeah, so I should have results for that for you. Probably in October.
Let's get into that.
What?
For the employee advisory committee.
Oh,
aspect, get into the questionnaire.
The questions won't be related to the employee advisory committee. You'll probably be taking some of the results and working with the advisory committee to talk about what they need.
Well, that'd be good. Yeah. Welcome on board. Change the weather from hot to hot.
I was promised cold weather.
I know, it's hot weather.
Oh, you brought it?
Yeah.
Just as long as you didn't bring the thunder with you. Welcome. Thank you, Greg.
Well, the most important thing to learn about Central Oregon weather is that whatever it's doing outside, people will say, well, it never does this here, really. So the weather here is completely unpredictable, but we're happy you're here and you know that you're doing lots of great ideas and expertise. People have been singing your praises truthfully, so I'm excited to have you. And thank you for all the detail, Greg. I appreciated the thorough reports as always, and I'm really excited about the Sunriver plans. I just think they really are going to make great use of the space that we have available and really improve the flexibility of that building and the utility of that building. And I think it's going to allow us to do some new and exciting things. And some exciting meeting.
Speaking of which, take advantage. This is one of your last chances to enjoy the classic Lafine Library before we do upgrades. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Not wrong.
Yeah, no, we're on the brink here, so
Check out this stuff.
okay. Any other comments, Todd?
No, thank you.
Okay, with that, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
That's good.